Over the last 6 months, I've spent thousands of pounds and huge amounts of time on making training my number one priority. I've put podiums, results, six-packs ahead of family, work, and even my wife, although she was fine with the six-pack. But today, for reasons I'll explain, it's all over. I'm no longer as fast, as strong, as fit as I recently was, but can now eat what I like, have got lots more free time, and my wife still gets the six-pack. She just has to decide where she's going to hang it. So 6 months ago, my journey up Fitness Mountain had taken me from the lows of obesity and a 50-inch waist to being above average in many ways. I could run, I could cycle, I could lift, and it finally felt good value for money to pay $9.99 and get my post-race photographs. And all that left me teasingly in sight of the summit, the peak of how good I could be. If you're on a similar journey yourself, you may wonder what happens when you get to above average. Will you be content with good enough? Or will you want to go further, be the best version of you? Certainly, social media would suggest that anything less was doing yourself a disservice.
You have the skill and the willpower and the discipline to get it done.
It is hard not to get caught up in all that. I would look at footage of myself winning my age group at a 10K fun run. And I'd be very aware that David Goggins would not be satisfied standing on a podium in front of that duck pond. He'd want to be swimming in it. Handcuffed, apparently, and so 6 months ago I became inspired to go beyond above average. Metaphorically, I climbed towards my own peak of excellence and have now returned to tell you whether or not, for me, it was worth it. First, what did I do different to what I had been doing in order to be better? And this is important because many people thought I was doing lots already. I wasn't. I worked out like most regular people, tried to be consistent, tried to balance strength and cardio, tried to eat sensibly.
That's good.
In fact, the biggest improvements I ever saw were achieved between starting to train for the very first time in my mid-late 30s to 10 years later when I was in reasonable shape for my mid-40s. I was running 20-minute 5Ks, doing Spartan races, crushing ultramarathons.
This is stupid. Why would anybody want to do this? This is nuts.
Almost crushing ultramarathons, and I achieved that with really very little. I just tried to jog a bit each day, but in the beginning that meant jog to a lamppost, walk to the next because I'd be exhausted. I tried to avoid eating badly, but didn't really know what that meant, so just tried to not eat too much. And things like a proper training program or supplementing my diet with protein powder or creatine, that just wasn't considered. And when I started putting what I did on YouTube, which I didn't really do with any kind of regularity until 2020 when I first started to cycle during COVID, even then I wasn't this great athlete people think. In fact, because I was doing a wider range of sports to make the channel interesting, my focus was really to just do them without going backwards, as a result of spreading myself too thin. The reason people think I'm doing more, doing better, is the same reason for everyone on social media. It's because 100% of what you see is just 2 or 3% of what I do. It's easy to get the impression something more is going on than it is, even if that's not my intention. Back when I did stand-up, I used to have a joke about how people would assume, because I had 4 kids and was quite young, I must have been at it all the time. No, I'd done it 4 times and just been really careless. Bottom line, do not judge a book by its cover, do not judge an athlete by their Instagram, and do not judge anyone's sexual prowess by the number of school plays they've had to sit through.
You could put him on Letterman tomorrow with that routine.
Yeah.
So 6 months ago, here's what I changed. I narrowed my focus onto targeted goals, I got a coach, I upped the training intensity, I fixed my diet, and I added recovery solutions to deal with all that. What did that look like? And what was the results? I'll tell you, but don't forget the specifics of this are particular to me. Some of the things I did and achieved would be impossible for others. Financial restrictions, time restrictions, natural ability, previous injuries or illness, endless reasons, and of course some may be able to do far more than I did. The point is we're all different and will do and be able to do different things. My hope in describing my journey is that you are able to relate it to your own, irrespective of what that might look like. So for example, somebody might have a 30-minute park run and is contemplating going from 3 to 4 training sessions a week to try and get a 25-minute park run. That might be their mountain to climb or not. Remember, The secret to motivation, whether it's from a fitness influencer or your favorite movie hero, is to find inspiration, take it and fuel your own objectives from it. It's not to blindly emulate someone else's objectives and just copy them. If it were, I'd do all my running in a white onesie and be punched in the face on a regular basis. Narrowing focus was the first thing I had to do. I'd begun my health improvement journey with jogging and then running off-road, then obstacle course races, and I thought getting some kayaks would be fun, then a paddleboard. I got into cycling, indoors, outdoors, all the while still hitting the gym. So by accident, I became a hybrid athlete, an all-rounder. I could turn my hand to most things and be pretty good.
This is stupid.
Pretty good. But that meant constant compromise. My ultramarathon performance would be slower because I'd hit the weights the day before, or my cycle ride might be harder because I'd had a tough track session earlier in the week, which was fine until I realized that if I was going to climb as high as possible, I should really pick just one mountain. And so I went with high rocks. If you know nothing of that sport, it doesn't matter for this video. I could just as easily have picked any of the other things I was doing. The reason I went with it is because it alternates 1 kilometer runs with set exercises. For example, rowing machine, sled push, lunges, a total of 8 kilometers, 8 exercises. So it's a good measure of all-round fitness, and importantly, every race, no matter where it is laid out identically. So you can compare very simply one race to another. It was a mountain with a very clear path up it and an obvious summit. For me, that was running a race in the pro division and doing so in around 70 minutes. 10 minutes faster than I'd ever done before, and it would make me one of the fastest in my age group, 50 to 55.
Your kind is headed for extinction.
I used to think, especially with the invention of YouTube, that one-to-one coaching was unnecessary for beginners and really only useful for elite athletes. Of course, it wouldn't hurt, just not necessary. But the first thing I did when I started this 6-month experiment was get a coach. Because maybe I was wrong. Maybe there is only so much you can gain from YouTube tutorials. So I worked under 2 different people during this time on a one-to-one basis. 2 for no real reason other than I'd never used any before, so wanted to try more than one. I started under Hunter McIntyre, current High Rocks world champion, and then halfway through switched to Jade Skillin, one of the top coaches in the sport. And no question, having a coach made the biggest difference. No longer was I going into the gym or out for a run intuitively. I was doing exactly what was on my program, and I would update that program with my results. The coach would see that and then make necessary adjustments to future training accordingly. It meant everything I was doing was designed for me by someone that knew me and knew my goals and knew how to get me better. The training side was done remotely with Training Peaks and the True Coach app to record stuff. Now, would having someone in the gym with me have been even better? Maybe. And if I struggled with form and good technique, then probably. But for where I was at, it worked. I could always record myself on video if needed, but really the coaching that I required was get this done rather than here's exactly how to do this. The training in the intensity and the regularity of my training is where if I had a regular job, kids, just day-to-day responsibilities, I would have struggled most to do what I did. I said from the outset to both my coaches, assume I have nothing in the diary other than this objective. And so they filled my diary. That meant 2 training sessions most days. A rest day would still involve some form of low intensity activity. Then there was the mobility work, all the stuff I was doing for recovery, meal prep. In short, hours every single day were spent on this one goal. Funnily enough, I used to get emails from people saying, Mark, I work out 2 or 3 hours every single day, and now my 5th wife is about to leave me. Any tips on how to fit everything in? And I'd think, yeah, stop working out so much, you moron. But over the last 6 months, I've almost started to sympathize with those people. You can drum up more motivation and you can scrape together more money. But hours you can't make if 24 a day is not enough. If you have a partner, you might find the only thing getting squeezed is your time. And talking of sacrificing nice things, the changes I made to my diet didn't bother me, but my suggestions that takeaway night could now consist of weighing food and tracking the calories did not go down well with Jenna. In short, my diet was boring. The focus wasn't eating on healthy as such, rather ensuring I had my protein requirements met, I had sufficient carbs to do the endurance training, the right volume of food so I wasn't tired and hungry, and the simplest way to do that is to work out a day or 2 of eating, which ticks all the boxes, and then just repeat it every day. So it wasn't tough to stick to, but it wasn't much fun. The only upside was that as somebody who suffers from occasional binge eating compulsions, if I did have a day where things went wrong, it was easy to get straight back to it, because eating right was so clearly defined. I just wake up the day after eating non-stop burgers and donuts and go right back to what my app told me I should be eating. And the last major change was simply learning how to recover from all that I was doing. I say simply, I never actually managed this one completely. The amount of money I spent on chiropractors, physios, sports therapists, doctors to keep me going was second only to the actual coaching costs. I went from pretty much never having experienced any sort of injury to waking up each day unsure what new part of my body would hurt. Now, as I said earlier, the specifics of this are very particular to me, and in this area even more so. I'm 50 years old, I'm quite heavy, got a long history of being very badly out of shape, and I'm doing a sport that can be pretty tough on anyone. High Rocks is not quite as good as CrossFit when it comes to keeping physios in business, but it creates its share of problems. Doing explosive movements, prioritizing speed over form, all while suffering extreme fatigue, we are way past lamppost to lamppost. So for me, it hammered me, so I had to pay more attention than ever to stopping aches and pains, or dealing with them when that failed. It was actually a good example of why becoming a better athlete doesn't automatically mean becoming a healthier person. There may well be an overlap, but that's almost coincidental if it happens. So that's what I did, but what did I achieve? Was I happy with that? And if I was, why have I reverted back instead of continuing onwards, upwards even? The simple, boring answer is that I got better in every area that I was focused upon. I dropped body fat, even though it wasn't a hugely important part of the process. I got faster and stronger, and the numbers on everything I was measuring were going up. In training, I got my 5K down to 18.5 minutes. I was hitting personal bests and achieving podiums at High Rocks races. My times there kept moving closer to the goal I set. When I did other events that fitted nicely alongside High Rocks, I did well there too. My 10K time was faster than ever before, and I just walked around feeling, when I wasn't injured, good. It's almost a hard one to describe, but I had a very real sense when out and about in public that I was physically very above average. It was almost as though some primal genetic trait was awakened. I'd be out with my wife and I'd say, caveman times, I'd be the alpha male here. Although she'd say, you're in Wagamama's and you just ordered from the children's menu because your app told you you've had too many calories today. Calm down. So as I approached the end of last year, all good. The plan was to extend the 6-month experiment to the end of January, this month, when I'd be able to compete at High Rocks in Manchester with the very real aim of achieving first place in my age group and setting a time among the fastest in the world. And then, early December, I pretty much gave up. But gave up is the wrong way to describe it. I actually got close enough to clearly see the summit and just decided it simply wasn't worth that last push to the top. And this will be for reasons again particular to me. I have no doubt there are many people out there that would have carried on, become the best that they could be. Whoever wins that race in Manchester will probably be one of them. And we need people like that. Without them, there'd be very little to watch at the Olympics. And outside of the world of sports, without hyperachievers in other walks of life, nobody would be able to sit in Wagamama's and order children's meals, taking abuse from their wife. We'd all be in caves still. But I'm not one of those people. I looked at where I was heading, I imagined what that would be like to be that good, and I turned around. Why? Why did the top of the mountain not look quite so cool when I was just below it compared to when I was only halfway up? A bunch of reasons. First, the algorithm on my social media feeds became as obsessed with me at wanting to be better. So I was getting presented with complete lunatics. I don't mind the occasional clip of Goggins. Stay hard! And I'm happy to scroll past a 5-hour podcast from Huberman on the benefits of mouth taping, but this went beyond all that. I was being told that I absolutely needed more fitness, to be more jacked, to lift heavier weights, and then to have more money and a bigger house and a better car, and ideally to achieve all those at the expense of anybody in my path.
What I've done now is I have changed and manipulated time. I now get 21 days a week. Stack that up over a month, I'm going to kick your butt.
And I understand the algorithm's intention. I expect a lot of people that are pushing themselves as hard as they can do get really fired up by being told to crush everybody in sight.
I'm a psycho competitor, which means if you're going to compete with me, I'm going to rip your throat out.
No thanks. I prefer waking up in the morning and thinking, am I happy today? Yes, good. Do those I care about appear to be happy today? Yes, good. So I should probably do what I did yesterday then.
You're toast.
And it wasn't just a virtual obsession with self-betterment that I was encountering. The more I immersed myself in the top end of the Hyrox athletes, the more I realized that world just isn't for me. They just took it real serious. And it just seemed a bit, for me, less fun. And then I raced in London in November with a very specific target in mind. First place in my age group and a personal best. And I found myself just after halfway through the race in second place, over a minute behind the leader in my age group, and probably not on track for a personal best. So I dropped out. Quite sensibly, given my targets. Continuing on would have meant having to do the lunges and the wall balls, which hammer my legs, and for what? Yet another second place. It would have been pointless. Better that I leave myself able to get straight back in the gym the next day, back to training, and return to another event in the future and get the actual target I wanted. That was sensible. And yet chatting with people afterwards who'd spent hours completing the course, almost killing themselves, and yet were over the moon with their performance, I did start to question what I was doing. And so I found myself visualizing a first place finish, imagining what that would feel like to be that good, and then weighing it against the aches and the pains that I was suffering, the cost of coaching and the physios and the doctors. And then the nail in the coffin, I started to realize what I'd been missing. I hadn't touched the kayak or the paddleboard all year, had hardly been out on my bike, had not done a single race on Zwift, hadn't gone for a trail run with Nixon in months, couldn't really train alongside Jenna because basically if it didn't fit with the goal, it didn't happen. And I was done. Keep your summit. So what now? Well, for the first time ever, really, I know exactly where I want to be. I've spent time at the bottom of the mountain and now almost at the top. So I'm confident in saying I enjoy being halfway up. The grass is not greener elsewhere, not for me. Now, having taken a few weeks off training, I might have actually descended a bit below halfway. So there's a little climbing to do right now, but I will then settle back into what I was enjoying a couple of years ago. That means I'll be doing 5Ks, 10Ks, obstacle course races, ultra marathons, bike rides, stuff with Jen, stuff with Nixon. I will not be amazing at any of them, and I might even struggle at a few, although that always seems to go down well here anyway, but most importantly, I'll be very happy doing them. And there is plenty from the last 6 months that I will continue with. I joined a better gym for this process, and that place is awesome, not going back to my old one. I'll still use one-to-one coaching, although it'll be more about setting me a routine for a month and then checking in on how I'm doing. And a bunch of the recovery techniques that I used are going to be helpful going forward as I get older. And Hyrox will continue, but done for fun with no more singles pro division races. Instead, I've already got a few doubles races lined up, one with my kid and then another doubles race with my wife. How fast will we go? No idea, don't really care. Faster than the average person sat at home eating Pringles. And actually, I say no more pro single races. I am doing the race in Manchester at the end of this month, but in my current condition, I won't be anywhere near the front. But don't mind. You could ask, why bother doing it then? And really the reason is that I've raced in Manchester before, and there's an amazing little bar we go to afterwards for food and drinks. And I owe Jenna a couple of nights out where I'm not eating like a 12-year-old and logging my calories, even if it's not in quite such alpha male condition. And if she's got a problem with that, she can stand that on the bar.